In this video, we will describe how to connect to a DB2 server using a DB2 client. The DB2 client can be in the same system as your DB2 server, or on a different remote system. As described in other videos, a DB2 client may not be required to connect to a DB2 server. For example, if you develop a JDBC application, you only need to have a JCCD driver installed in your system. A DB2 client is not needed in that case. Let me start with the concept of directories. Directories are binary files in DB2 where all connection information is stored. The main one is the system database directory, which is like the table of contents of a book if you want to see which databases you can connect to from your client. Whether the database is local, meaning it's on the same server where your DB2 server is, or remote, meaning it's on different server. You can simply check the system-based directory. To do this, from the command window or Linux shell, you can issue this command db2 list db directory. For example, in my case, I have 4 entries or 4 databases I can connect to from this client. So this command is showing me the system database directory. It has 4 entries. There is one database called research. This is the alias and this is the name. So in this case, or by default, the name and alias are the same. Normally, what you see to connect is the alias. Then we have this particular database on drive D, and it says here the directory entry type is indirect. Whenever it says indirect, it means it's a local database. So this database is in my same system because you see it says indirect and it's in drive D. This other database, DB101, is also local, so it's in my same system as my client. In this case, it's stored in drive C. It's I scroll down, I have a database called Moodle, which is remote, so that means it is not in the same system as my clients, it's in a different system. And then this is a node name called my node. I will talk more about this later, but this is basically a pointer to another directory that has the information about the host name and port number of the other system where this database resides. And finally, we have the sample database. It is a local database because it says here indirect and it's stored in the C drive. For more details about your local database, you can take a look at the local database directory using the command lostdb directory on, and then you specify the drive or the path. So let's take a look at this. From the command window or Linux shell, we saw that some databases were on drive C and drive D for the local database. So if I want to know more information about them, I could do db list db directory and press enter. So this shows me 2 entries and there is some internally names provided for each of these databases. The same thing I can do for drive D, and in this case we have the research database with this internal meaning convention for that database. So if I wanted to see from, in this case, Windows Explorer, what are these databases, normally by default DB2 will create. At the root of this drive C, the directory called DB2. and then within that they're called node 000, which in the case of DB2 Expressy is just a fixed directory. If you were working on with other editions of DB2, this will change to node 0001, node 002, and so on when you work with partition database. But in the case of DB2 Expressy, since the DPF or database partition feature is not provided, this will always be fixed. Then you have the name of the database, and this other correspond to the databases. So here is where your database are stored locally. So obviously you should not delete this directory or you will be deleting your databases. For more details about remote databases, as specifically where they are, what port to use to reach them, you can issue the command list node directory. So let's try that db2 list node directory, and I press enter. And I have one single entry. If you recall, we found this string my node in the system database directory. The system database directory can point to the correct entry in the node directory. And then this directory or this entry is showing me that it's pointing to this host name. It could have also been an IP address. db2university.com, and this is the port to use to connect to that db2 instance that has the database that we want to reach. When you connect to a db2 for ISOS or db2 for ZOS, which is a mainframe, you need to install another software called db2 connect. When you install that software, you will have a directory called DCS directory. Use the command list DCS directory to view the contents of this directory. In my case, I do not have db2 connect installed, so I will not show you this command.